Hello, this is Ms. DB. In this video we are going to look at how to do some of the problems on your Expressions with Exponents worksheet. So we are going to evaluate numerical and variable expressions involving powers, and powers and exponents really are the same. Extend order of operations to include evaluating powers, write variable expressions to represent and solve real-world problems involving operations and exponents. So there's some reading material in your book, and there's also some examples on your worksheet. So the red box means it's an example or something to read about, not to solve. So here's some example problems. It says to write each product using exponents. The first one is a whole bunch of 2's that are being multiplied by each other. The 2 is the base, and how many times we are multiplying the 2 will tell us what to use for an exponent. So you count the 2's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and the 9 then is the exponent. Altogether, 2 to the 9th power is called a power. But we usually call this the exponent, but sometimes it's called a power, and then the 2 is the base. So the 2 again is the number that will be repeatedly multiplied. The exponent tells us how many times you will be multiplying it. And B is very similar. Now in C, there's some 2's being multiplied, and then there's some 3's being multiplied. They don't go together. The 2's, there is 1, 2, 3 of them, so that's a base of 2, and the exponent is 3 because we're multiplying 2 3 times. And then we'll count the 3's, the base of 3, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, so that's 3 for the base and 4 for the exponent. And that's how you would leave your answer. You don't multiply the bases together or the exponents together. If they're different bases, they just get written next to each other. We are also not evaluating. Evaluate means to find the value of. We're not doing that in these problems. We're just practicing writing them with exponents. Writing with exponents is a shortcut, and we often like to leave them as exponents rather than finding out what 2 to the 9th power is, or 3 to the 4th times 2 to the 3rd. We'll do some evaluating later, but on these problems we're just writing using exponents. Look at E. It's 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. Leave the 1/2 as a fraction, and the exponent will be 3. So it's a base of 1/2 to the 3rd power. It's fine to have bases that are fractions like that. So you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are very similar to these examples, and write them with exponents. Do not evaluate. Now on the next section it says find the value of. Another word for this would be evaluate. Evaluate means go ahead and find what it would be if you use your calculator or your math skills. So the first example here, again in the red box, are examples. 4 to the 3rd power means, this is called expanded form. If you don't have to write them in expanded form, but if you're asked to, that's what it means. So it means 4 times 4 times 4, and then you multiply those together, either by hand or with a calculator, and 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 times 4 is 64. So we would get 64 for our answer. I'm going to show you on the calculator that's on my computer how I would do this problem to check if I multiplied correctly. 4 to the 3rd power. First of all, make sure your calculator is a scientific calculator. Scientific calculators will have more options above the numbers than just add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So we have this key right here is the one that I want, x to the y power. So I type in the 4, and then I click on the x to the y power, and you can see up here it's showing exponent. And then I need the 3. So 4 to the 3rd power, and then the equal sign. And it is indeed 64. One more thing that I should have told you up here, to make an exponent in Word, if you don't want to, here you could use the tools. This is the best way. 5 to the, and then click on this x squared button if you have your tools open, and then that will make an exponent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think it's to the 7th, but you guys recount and check. That's one way to do it, and then you have to click it again to turn off that. Or you can type 5 and then Shift and 6 at the same time give you that key, which also tells us that an exponent is coming. It's standard understood that that also means there's an exponent. So either one of those ways is how you would make an exponent using Word. All right, going back to my questions here. So I showed you on a calculator how you would do that part. Now look at B. B has two different bases, 2 to the 3rd and 5 to the 4th. You would figure them each out separately. 2 to the 3rd power is 8, 5 to the 4th power is 625. Then you multiply them together, because the order of operations says to do the exponents before you do any multiplication. In C, you also do the exponents first before you do any adding. So C is the same 8 and the same 625, but this time you'll add them together. Now be very careful if you have your base as a negative number. In D, we have parentheses around the -3, and then it's to the 4th power. If I type this on my calculator as -3 to the 4th power, I'll get the wrong answer because I didn't use parentheses. Actually, I think it gave me the right answer. So my calculator did a good job. Usually you'd have to use parentheses and then put in your... So this says -3 in parentheses to the 4th power. That's a better way of making sure that you get the right answer. A lot of calculators would look at that as being negative, and then they would do 3 to the 4th, which is 81, and they'd give you an answer of -81. So double check on your calculator that it's not giving you the wrong sign of your answer. If the base is in parentheses, that means that is the number that is repeatedly multiplied. So -3 times -3 times -3 times -3. If the exponent, or if the negative is in front, not in parentheses like in E, then that just means your answer will be the opposite of whatever you get. This is supposed to have an exponent of 4 on here. There's a typo. This is supposed to be -3 to the 4th. Right here. And that means the negative is in front. Then you do 3 to the 4th, and your answer would be a -81 in that case. If your base is a fraction, leave it as a fraction. Here's how you multiply fractions. You multiply all the numerators, 1 times 1 times 1, and then you multiply all the denominators, 2 times 2 times 2. Here's another way. If you have something like 3/4 to the 4th power, that's the same as 3 to the 4th over 4 to the 4th. So then you can figure out what 3 to the 4th is. We did that, it's 81. And did we do 4 to the 4th? We didn't. 4 to the 4th power is 256. So this, if I had 3/4 to the 4th power, that would be equal to 81 over 256. So if you start with a fraction as a base, leave your answer as a fraction. Leave the base. I just did part of your problem for you for number 11. See? There's the 3 to the 4th right here. You just have to figure out 1/2 squared, and then you multiply your two fractions. Now 14, 15, 16, first you have to take the value of your variable. So in number 15, x is equal to -3. Put that in to your expression and then evaluate it. Let's look at number 15. So we have -3 x squared, but x is equal to -3. So we're going to use parentheses and put in -3 squared because x is equal to -3 times y, and y is -5. It's best to use parentheses if your variable is negative. Parentheses help you separate that your variable is negative and also show multiplication. So the next thing that we are supposed to do is simplify the exponents. So right here we have -3 squared. -3 times -3 is a +9. And then they still have -5. So this is all multiplication now. This means -3 times 9 times -5. You can now use your calculator. On my calculator, I have to type the number and then the negative, times 9 times, and you can check up here and see if it's typing the way you want it to, times 5 negative. There, I got it. Equals 135. It should be positive because I have two negatives, and a negative times a negative is positive. So there's number 15. All right, there's another section on this worksheet. Here's a review of order of operations. You can use that for both parts of your worksheet. And then here's an example of the kinds of problems that you're going to do just a few of, where you're going to follow the order of operations, and these are just a little bit more complicated. So you're going to work first within the grouping, which is the same as parentheses. Parentheses and grouping or brackets, those are all the same thing. Then you'll do any exponents. If you had square roots, you'd do that at that point too. Then multiplication and division from left to right, then addition and subtraction from left to right. Make sure you realize that you can divide and multiply equally from left to right, and you can add and subtract equally from left to right. Let's look at 17. It looks fun. So to start with, we are going to look at this grouping part. And there's these square brackets, and then there's parentheses inside of there. So the very first thing that we'll do in this problem is right there. That, I'm trying to find my highlighter. Right there. That's the first thing that we'll do. So let's just write the rest of it as it is. 3 squared I can write with that little caret. Plus, I'm going to keep my bracket, and all I'm going to simplify is the 5 times 2. Now I could leave it in parentheses if I want. It doesn't hurt anything to leave it in parentheses, or I could drop them because I have simplified at this point. And then I'll close my bracket, minus 8 times 2. Okay, next line. I'm not done with my parentheses yet, so I'm going to keep working with my parentheses. Okay, in the parentheses, in square brackets, I have 10 minus 3. I didn't really need the parentheses for the 10, so I'm just going to go ahead and figure out 10 minus 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. 8 times 2. That star sign means multiplication if you don't want to mess with finding the dot. All right, next thing I'm supposed to do is exponents. So I'm going to go ahead and do the 3 to the power of 2. 3 times 3 is 9. I don't need the parentheses around the 7 anymore. And the next thing I do is multiplication. I do have multiplication or division. I have it at the very end where it says minus 8 times 2. 8 times 2 is 16. Whoops. All right, almost done. I am going to next add and subtract in order from left to right. 9 plus 7 is 16. Wow, am I going to get 0 here? And 16 minus 16 is 0. So there's all the steps to simplifying this expression, evaluating this expression, using the order of operations. And yes, I wrote every step, and it did take a little while, but as you get going, you might see some that you could do at the same time and save yourself a few steps. But it's very, very easy to make a mistake on these, and if you make one mistake, like if you forget that you have to multiply before you subtract, then you'll get the wrong answer. So follow the order of operations, be very careful, show your work so that I can find your mistake if you get it wrong. And then you'll do the rest of the problems like that. The last section, you only have to choose 2 of these. There's 3 of them. You can skip one, whichever one you want. They will be using exponents in some way. 23 and 24 are very similar to each other, and they have surprising answers. Would you rather have $1 million or a penny doubled each day for 30 days? Show your work, explain your answers. So you might make a table, you might write an expression, You might look in your book because they do talk about problems like this in your textbook, and you might even find a shortcut way of solving them, or the solution, or the problem started for you. If you have any questions, please, you can email me anytime. You can come to my office hours, come to the ASC room when I'm there, or just go to the ASC room anytime it's open. Any of the teachers there can help you with your work. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.